Hello, everybody. It's Martha McCallum here, and it's a new edition of the Untold Story podcast. And I have a very special friend with me today as we have Memorial Day this week, and then we're off to Normandy to recognize the 80th anniversary of D-Day, which of course is a day that was one of the most heroic days in the history of this world, reestablished the beacon for freedom in Europe under the oppression of Hitler. And the man I'm about to speak to, Jack Gutman, was there on the beaches in Omaha, and he was a medic, a Navy corpsman. And Jack, it's great to have you with me today. Thank you so much, my friend, for joining me.
Well, I thank you for having me on. I was just delighted to hear that I was going to be on, and it's been about 5 years since we interviewed in Normandy.
Yeah.
And I've had a few people ask me to go back to Normandy, but the one trip I had, I can't do it because there's too much action.
Yeah.
So they understand. Mm-hmm. And so what I do is do the speaking. They'll pick me up and bring me home and do the job, and then I'll get on the about Normandy, whatever they want, but I will come back to the telling them how important, no matter what the venue I'm doing, whether it's Rotary or school kids or elderly kids, I tell them that they've got to feel important with their gift that they've been given. And what they don't realize, like if a guy's a carpenter, that's a gift. And he touches lives. And I make them aware of how the gift is important to touch lives.
Well, Jack, you touch so many lives, and I want to go back for those who don't know you. We met in Normandy, as you said, 5 years ago at the 75th anniversary, and it was the first time that you had gone back. It was something you wanted to do your whole life, to go back. Your son, who's a wonderful man who I got to meet as well, was with you there, and he was outlining your whole journey and filming all of it along the way. There was a moment that I witnessed, was the first time that you went to the cemetery and you saw that enormous field of white crosses. And you were very emotional, Jack. Tell us a little bit about that moment for you and what it was like going back after all those years since D-Day.
Well, number one, I want to clarify one thing. I was offered Normandy a couple times before I finally went for that anniversary by George Ciampa, who passed away.
Yes.
God bless him. I miss him. But he changed my life. You see, Martha, and I hated the French because I thought they didn't care that our men died. And I held that against them, especially when I went through the 66 years of PTSD. But what happened is that I went there and fell in love with wonderful people. And I'll tell you, changed my whole life. As a matter of fact, I was walking along one of the streets and where they had the guy hanging from the
St. Mary-Église.
Yeah, in Normandy. We're walking down the streets, and two beautiful girls come up and said, "Could I take a picture of you?" And so I said, "Sure." So I took a picture, and they said, "Could we kiss you?" And he said, I said, "My wife isn't here, so help yourself." But anyway, walking on the cemetery was a very, very emotional thing. for me to see when you're a medic, it's personal, and you are there when you kind of heal them or make it better, or you watch them die. I saw many die. So walking on the cemetery, and I looked at all of those graves, and I said, there are many men that I took care of that didn't make it, you know, and you always wonder, because I was 18, and I always held to myself, did I do my best? And that is why I talk about thinking of being important. And I was very emotional, and my son was a great help to be there with me, because I wound up, you know, crying. But it was a really, really emotional time.
So tell us your journey on D-Day. You grew up in New York, first of all, where I am and where I work here at Fox. And you were, I think, 18 when you left to go train
Yes.
in England. So, you know, tell us the build up to D-Day and what you remember about that actual day, Jack.
Yeah, the training was in England, and then we wound up, about 50 guys were sworn to secrecy, and we went into training, climbing the ropes and going through hitting the beaches, and we were told if we tell anyone about what we're doing, we'll be court-martialed or shot. And when you're 18, it's scary. And so I kept it quiet. Even when I went to Okinawa, almost a year later, I never really told anybody what I was doing there. My job there was we were being trained to take care of the wounded on the beach and evacuate them. That's what we were supposed to do, to help out. Well, when we hit the beach 3 hours later, after the initial deal, we thought it was going to be a cakewalk, and it turned out to be hell. Bodies were in the water, and for an 18-year-old to see that and on the beach, and you had to walk in water up to your hips, and the guns are still going on, killing guys. It was terrible. And I've often told many people where I speak, and I said, I felt I was not prideful. I had a job to do, and I did it. And I was a scared kid. But I'll tell you what, when I came upon the first man that was laying there gushing blood, and I went to help him, and he yells out to me, "Doc, help me, help me." I'll tell you one thing, I became important to that soldier then. And I decided that's what I had to do, and I went into survival mode and started doing my job and feeling more important about it.
Yeah. So you talk about how a lot of the young men on their way to the beach, they hit the barriers and then they tried to jump off of their vessels, but a lot of them drowned before they ever got to the beach, right, Jack?
Yes. See what happened? I asked some of the wounded I was taking care of, why were the bodies off on the side? And they said there was an LCVP, or the Higgins boat, they call it, and it would come down and the guys would run off. Well, we were deep in the water, or had to walk up to our waist. But when that came down, they had a machine gun that could shoot off over 150 bullets a minute. and they still were shooting down, and the guys were trying to leap off the side when they saw these guys falling that went off the front ramp, and they had packs on them over 50 pounds, and if they couldn't get them off, they drowned. It was sad.
The Untold Story continues right after this.
What do you remember, just in terms of the sights and the sounds of that morning on the beach? You came in a few hours after the initial landing, correct? Give us a visual kind of understanding so that people understand how difficult this was and how heroic you all were.
The initial landing?
Yes, and what it was like when you first landed.
Yes, when we were coming in at least 3 hours later, figuring it was, like I said, a cakewalk, and because there was already so much bombing and so forth. But when the planes came over to drop the bombs on the bunkers up there, that we saw that, but we didn't know the results of it. I found out much later that the bombs dropped 1 mile away from the bunkers. And so the bunkers were intact, and that's how they could shoot down on these guys. So when we came in, they were still shooting, down on it. Not too many places to hide behind. So you did what you could and do your job. But it was absolute hell. You walked in water up to your waist. They had these mines that were on poles and different places, and in the barbed wire and everything. And there was lots of them. So they would shoot, and if they hit these mines, it blew up everything around it. Martha, it was an absolute hell.
I've heard you talk about this before, Jack, but, for those of you who survived, and I think, about 10 to 20,000 on both sides, the Axis powers and the Allied powers were killed that day. How did you grapple with that when you got home, Jack?
Well, I got home and I said to myself, well, I made it. And my family was happy. I had missed 2 Christmases. But the thing is this, I was getting these things flipping in my head, these things about they kept coming back. And my daughter said to me, well, like when I wrote my book, which was, one veteran to heal the wounds of war, this book, and it was
yes,
it was
wonderful book.
This has been on Amazon for 9 years already, so I've been through. But when I got home, it was I say joyful, but I kept getting these dreams, and the dreams were I kept seeing they weren't dreams, they're flashbacks.
Yes.
They call them. And so the flashbacks would be magnified. I would hear the guy screaming real loud. I would see the beach and everything was magnified. And it was a nightmare, just like a nightmare. I would get the flashes, and I thought they would go away, but it didn't happen. I carried those things for 66 years. When I came home, I never told anyone I was in the Navy. I did that. And when they talked about war, I would walk away from it.
Really?
I would not get involved.
So you never told anyone when you moved to California, as I remember, that you had fought on Omaha Beach and that you were a medic on D-Day? You didn't tell people that?
I was a medic on Omaha Beach on D-Day. I was there with them. And then also 8 months later or longer, I was making the invasion of Okinawa. And interesting thing, not too many men have done both theaters.
No, absolutely, Jack. But I'm asking, when you came back, you didn't share those experiences with people. You didn't tell them, oh, I was there.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I try to be as honest with it. I have helped a lot of things. Martha, there's an interesting story I even have in my book, and that was I had just finished over at Omaha Beach on the VIP center there with the other 6 guys. There were 7 of us, and the big TVs were interviewing each of us. And I went through each one of them, and I was tired. And I went and sat down. And my son brought me a sandwich and a drink. And a guy come up to me and he said, I read your book and you had PTSD, and could you do a 10-minute deal for me? And I was tired. I was going to turn him down. Then he says he deals with PTSD guys. And I said, well, those guys, I'll do a 10-minute deal for you.
Yeah.
Well, I did it, and I dismissed it. 4 months later, he calls me and told me, Jack, that 10-minute deal that you did kept 6 men from committing suicide. And it blew me away, and I said, I'm going to continue that. I want to touch lives and make people realize there is light on the end. It breaks my heart to see men commit suicide. And you know what it's like with the same thing will happen with your cousin. I mean, Gordon, a young man goes in war. He didn't commit suicide, but it was to lose anyone is always tough.
Yes. So, Jack, I'm curious, before I let you go, what you think about the 80th anniversary, and do you think this might be the last time that some are able to go back, given everyone's age?
Well, it's gone on a long time, and I don't know. I heard rumors that this was going to be the last one. Do you know if that's true?
I don't think it will be the last ceremony, but I think it might be one of the last times that there are veterans who are able to come because of everyone's age.
Right. Well,
but, yeah.
It's one of those things, and I think that is a good point that you bring up, because there's not too many guys, and when I run into them, they're really crippled, or some of them can't really speak well, and so it's gets tougher each year for them to do it.
That's why it's so important to us to hear from you. Yeah. And I'm so glad that you keep talking to groups, and you know, you're such a treasure, and you have so much to share in terms of your experiences. And as you say, you are one of the very few who fought in Normandy and then also went to Okinawa in Japan. So in both theaters, which is an extraordinary experience, but also sharing everything about what happened to you personally and how you have dealt with it is so very important to our younger veterans who can learn from those lessons, Jack.
Well, I am so excited to see you and speak to you again.
Thank you, Jack.
I think you are a marvelous, marvelous person. God bless you, Martha.
God bless you, Jack. And I keep a picture of you on my desk in my office from when we met 5 years ago. So to always remind me of what it takes to be a really good person and to try to help others. So you're a model for all of us. Well, before I let you go, one last thing. What do you think about the sacrifice that you all made when you look at America today? Are you discouraged or are you encouraged? Do you feel positive or negative?
No, negative to me, and I feel that we need a big change, and I never really get into politics with my family or friends because all it does is alienate people, and they're pretty well set in their ways. But that's okay with me because we all are entitled to what we believe and so what we hear. But right now, I think with inflation and everything, I know when I go to the market where I used to pay $130, it's $200 and $300.
I know.
And that tells me something right there.
Yeah, it does. Jack, thank you so much for joining me. It's wonderful to see you again, and God bless you, and be well. And thank you for all you have done for this country and for your service and for all you continue to do, sir.
Thank you so much, Martha. And anytime you want to talk to me, I'd be thrilled to talk to you.
Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you, Jack Gutman. The book is called One Veteran's Journey to Heal the Wounds of War. It is a 5-star book on Amazon. It's a wonderful, wonderful story. Your kids should read it to understand the sacrifices of the greatest generation. So I thank you for joining us. And that's our podcast for today for The Untold Story. I'm Martha MacCallum. I'll see you next time. You've been listening to The Untold Story with Martha MacCallum. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Make sure to rate and review. For more podcasts, go to foxnewspodcast.com. Listen ad-free with the Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.